The protagonist of this story was once hailed as the strongest man in human history. He and his army conquered countless nations across the world. In the face of his enemies' suffering, he seemed utterly indifferent, showing no concern. After numerous battles, he became a king ruling over a mighty empire. Though he was a sovereign, the battlefield was where he truly belonged. With his overwhelming strength, he harbored a grand ambition to conquer the world. Any enemy daring to oppose him was annihilated without mercy. And he even rained bombs and bullets to raze their lands to the ground. Thus, his throne was built upon the countless lives of innocent people. However, the era of this mighty king came to a swift end. Despite possessing power, strength, and fame, when the wars ended, he felt lonelier than ever. Sometime later, the king fell gravely ill and passed away. In his feverish haze, he thought everything was over. But then the gods granted him a new life, blessing him to find enlightenment in this new existence. When he awoke, he found himself before a peasant couple, and he was their newborn son, named Arthur. Everything happened so quickly that Arthur was taken aback. It turned out that the moment he died, he was reincarnated into a new life. In his previous life, he was a powerful king who achieved countless victories. But now he was forced to live in the frail body of a child. Since Arthur retained the memories of his past life, he could comprehend everything around him. His mother was named Alice, and his father was named Reynold. The couple took excellent care of Arthur, and he gradually accepted them as his parents. However, there were many things about this life that frustrated him. First, his body acted on the reflexes of an infant, beyond his control. Second, the uncontrollable bowel movements drove him mad. To him, this newborn body was like a prison. Though he tried to move as he wished, nothing went according to plan. At times, Arthur wished this life was just a dream and that he'd wake up soon. But this strange dream continued endlessly. Moreover, Arthur discovered many intriguing and unfamiliar aspects of this world. It was a world of magic, and his father could use magic to enhance his strength. With a single punch, Reynold could easily shatter a boulder, showing off to his wife and son, only to get hit on the head by a falling rock. Alice then used her healing magic to mend her husband's wound. On regular days, Reynold ventured into the nearby forest to hunt magical beasts, joined by comrades with remarkable powers. By noon, he'd return home to his wife and son, covered in wounds. Arthur realized that knowledge in this world was a vital weapon, so he constantly observed those around him. This society allowed individuals to freely wield weapons, indicating that this world was far from safe and highly dangerous. Arthur vowed to grow up quickly to gain strength. After welcoming Reynold home, it was time for Alice to put Arthur to sleep. He felt that, despite the inconveniences of recent days, this time was truly warm. In his past life, Arthur never had a single restful sleep, as any lapse in focus could allow rebels to infiltrate and assassinate him, forcing him to stay vigilant and eliminate them all. Arthur's peaceful life passed day by day, and soon he began crawling his first steps, delighting and thrilling his parents. They both agreed that Arthur was truly adorable, even giving him the nickname, Little Arthur, which mildly annoyed him. Though he'd lived here for months, Arthur still wasn't used to this name. After all, he was once a fearsome king, but he understood it was a minor issue not worth mentioning. The important thing was that he could now control his limbs. Later, Alice placed Arthur in his crib for a nap, kissing his cheek and wishing him a good sleep to grow strong. But the moment she left, Arthur mischievously climbed out of bed, crawling stealthily across the floor to the kitchen without her noticing. He then made his way to his father's study, filled with fascinating books. Finding one, Arthur finally got what he wanted: information about this world, a weapon in itself. The book explained that the continent of Decathan, where Arthur lived, comprised 3 kingdoms. First was the dwarven kingdom of Darv, sprawling underground. Second was the elven kingdom of Eleanor, deep within the forests. Lastly was the human kingdom of Sapin, where Arthur's family resided, the most populous kingdom. A monarchy like his old world, where the throne was inherited within the royal family, not seized. Unsatisfied with this information, Arthur sought more books, learning that this world was still developing, unlike the advanced world he once knew. One reason, the book noted, was magic. This world had a power called mana, and the ability to manipulate mana was largely hereditary. Only 1 in every 100 people was born with mana. Those with mana were divided into 2 types: augmenters and conjurers. Augmenters, like Reynold, used mana to enhance their bodies, granting immense strength, defense, and agility. Conjurers, like Alice, expelled mana outward and controlled it as they wished, such as healing Reynolds' wounds. The core that controlled mana was called the mana core, and awakening as a mage typically occurred from puberty to late adolescence by gathering latent mana fragments in the body to form a mana core, making one a complete mage. Arthur recalled that in his old world, there was something similar to mana called ki, controlled within the body and unleashed for power. Curious, he tried focusing ki as he did in his past life, and indeed, a latent energy within him stirred. But before he could release it, Alice found him, making Arthur worry she'd noticed something. Lifting him, she asked if he'd soiled himself. Initially, Arthur thought a supreme king like him would never do such a thing. But feeling below, he realized he was about to make a mess. So, Alice had to carry him off to change his diaper again. Time flew by, and now Arthur was a 2-year-old. Alice wrote in her diary that Arthur was the most adorable child in the world. Not only well-behaved but also curious and active, exploring everything around him. However, she wondered why Arthur had never smiled since birth. Suddenly, she noticed her husband training Arthur outside, proudly boasting that their son had the makings of a swordsman. But Alice, furious, declared Arthur the cutest child in the world, barely able to walk, and scolded Reynolds for teaching him swordsmanship. Calling it unacceptable, Reynolds could only apologize, not daring to argue. Observing this power dynamic, Arthur mused that this might be a matriarchal society, where the wife ruled the household, and the husband lived under her authority. Soon after, Alice took Arthur to town for a stroll, as she noticed he was always cheerful there. For Arthur, the streets were a key place to learn about the world. Shops sold a variety of weapons, swords, hammers, axes, indicating advanced craftsmanship. There were also stones and materials unknown in his old world. Arthur even witnessed people using magic firsthand, making this a valuable knowledge-gathering trip. After a tiring day, Alice carried Arthur home on her back. He felt this couple cared for him meticulously, sometimes inconveniently, but he had no complaints. Only now did Arthur understand what having parents felt like. In his past life, he was an orphan raised in an orphanage, watching other children go out with their mothers, wondering what having parents was like. Fortunately, in this life, he experienced their warmth. While Arthur slept, Alice confided in him, saying she was delighted when she caught him sneaking out of bed to read books or how his eyes lit up exploring the town. She was certain he inherited his father's blood and might grow up wanting to see the world like Reynolds. But deep down, she hoped Arthur would choose a peaceful life, as he'd always be her precious little Arthur. Arthur felt truly fortunate, as his father was like a living textbook, teaching him much. First, Reynolds channeled mana throughout his body, using it to manipulate stones. Though it looked strenuous, proudly, he asked Arthur if his dad was impressive. But Arthur thought bare hands might be faster. Alice arrived, noting that Reynolds' magic was subpar since he was a fighter, making spellcasting difficult. She added he'd now show his true strength. As she spoke, Reynolds used mana to enhance his body, raising his leg high and stomping the ground with devastating force. Arthur was impressed, realizing he couldn't stay weak and needed to train like his father to grow strong soon. But it was noon, so Alice insisted Arthur nap. He reached for the bookshelf, begging to read, and when she hesitated, he gave her pleading eyes. Unable to resist his cuteness, she relented, allowing him to read briefly before sleeping. Arthur was thrilled, having achieved his goal. Over 2 years, he amassed vast knowledge and experience, with his greatest achievement being the formation of his mana core. Initially, he thought gathering mana fragments into one point was daunting, but his hard work paid off. While his parents were outside, Arthur focused the final mana fragment, unleashing a massive surge of mana that obliterated their house. Reynolds shielded Alice with his body to protect her from the blast. But they had no time to worry about themselves. Only Arthur inside the house. They feared he might not have survived. But upon entering, they were stunned. Arthur was floating in midair like a saint. Overjoyed, Arthur believed this was a major leap in his power. His parents stood at the door, mouths agape, speechless at what they witnessed. Just then, the wooden ceiling collapsed above Arthur, making him panic, thinking he'd have to reincarnate again. Fortunately, his parents rushed in despite the danger, and Reynolds used all his strength to hurl the wooden beams out of the house. After the incident, Arthur's parents wept profusely, overjoyed that he was unharmed. For Arthur, this was when he truly understood that parents sacrifice to protect their children. Seeing them cry for the first time puzzled him. In his past life, he'd seen parents fiercely devoted to their children, yet he couldn't comprehend it then or now. It seemed this was something no book in this world could teach him. Even Arthur was moved, hugging his parents and crying loudly, hoping they'd teach him more about family bonds. But the days ahead would bring great challenges for Arthur's family. And in a dark cave, a monster lay in wait for Arthur's arrival. In his past life, Arthur faced an assassination attempt by a messenger, who was captured alive by the royal guards and sentenced to death by the National Council. However, Arthur granted him a rare mercy, allowing him to return to his homeland to face his punishment there. At that moment, the man's wife and children were also brought to share his fate. Panicked, the man pleaded, admitting he had defied the king, but insisted his crime was his alone and had nothing to do with his family. He said returning to his homeland would bring a fate worse than death. But he didn't care what happened to him. He only begged the king to spare his wife and children. The council scoffed, calling him insolent and saying such a trivial matter shouldn't trouble the king. The sentence was final, and no amount of pleading could change it. Coldly, Arthur personally took the lives of the man's family. The council was stunned that the king himself carried out the execution, believing this was an act of compassion to free the condemned from suffering. The man, bitter and helpless, could only bow and thank the king, unable to do anything more. Though Arthur was ruthless in his past life, he's now been reborn into a vibrant new world. Today, his father, Reynold, wants him to train to become a fighter like him. But Arthur merely raises a wooden sword, leaving Reynold speechless. Arthur thinks his tiny body would be overwhelmed using gauntlets, likely getting taken out first. A long sword, he decides, is the weapon he loves most. Immediately, father and son begin a sword training session. With swordsmanship skills from his past life, Arthur charges aggressively, while Reynold wields a mana-enhanced stick. Seeing this, Arthur infuses mana into his wooden sword, shocking his father, then charges and snaps the stick in two, leaving Reynold amazed. Proudly, Arthur proves his strength to his father. Recognizing Arthur's exceptional talent, Reynold plans to send him to study under a master. He tells Alice how Arthur, at just 4 years old, broke a mana-enhanced object. But Alice firmly opposes, believing they can teach him themselves and refusing to let their adorable Arthur lie far away. Reynold agrees Arthur is the cutest kid on earth but insists that for his future, they must let him go. The couple bickers, leaving Arthur exasperated. He suggests the whole family go together for fun. Hearing this, they gape, realizing it's a brilliant idea. They stop arguing and praise Arthur as a true genius. Seeing his parents so happy reassures Arthur, and the next morning, the family packs to set off. Escorted by Reynold's old teammates, Arthur politely greets the group and introduces himself. They assume he was too young to remember them, but Arthur recalls them clearly. They helped repair the family's house after the explosion 2 years ago. They are the Twin Horns adventuring party, and his parents are members. First is Adam, a red-haired youth, then Angela, who hugs Arthur tightly, unable to resist his cuteness. Third is Durden, a reserved man, Jasmine, a cold-faced assassin, and finally Helen, an archer. With everything ready, Reynold orders the group to move out. Arthur is thrilled for his first trip away from home. Along the way, he notes the world's outdated transportation compared to the advanced airships of his old world. But he finds it charming, as this is a brand new world. By day's end, the group stops near a forest to rest. Arthur learns they're heading to Xyrus City and is eager to see what it holds. But he knows a major issue looms. This world is far from safe. Suddenly, forest wolves surround them, and Reynold and his team leap into combat. Jasmine cuts down wolves in seconds as they charge her. Reynold, Adam, and Helen swiftly handle the rest, while Durden and Angela unleash spells, leaving the wolves no chance. From this battle, Arthur deduces Jasmine, Adam, and Helen are physical attack augmenters, while Durden and Angela are conjurers with long-range magic. Their seamless teamwork makes Arthur eager to grow as strong as them. That night, the group enjoys a lavish dinner of wolf meat. As it's the middle of their journey, Arthur can't expect gourmet food, but the fresh meat is the best they have. During dinner, Alice notices Reynold's injured hand, so the team instinctively spreads out to keep watch, allowing Alice to heal him undisturbed. Arthur knows his mother is a rare healer mage, a power she must hide, as revealing it could attract dangerous enemies, which is why the couple lives in a secluded area. Minutes later, Alice finishes healing Reynold. Suddenly, Adam suggests sparring with Arthur to stretch their muscles before bed, wrapping his spear for safety. Arthur senses this is no casual spar, and the group seems excited rather than concerned. Despite his age, still, he agrees to test his current strength. Adam enhances his weapon, showing no intent to hold back, so Arthur infuses mana into his wooden sword and legs. Charging full force, he darts behind Adam with blazing speed, stunning the onlookers, then exchanges blows in a seemingly uneven match. Arthur's light body is soon flung back by Adam. Alice worries, but Angela's wind magic cushions Arthur, preventing injury. Afterward, the group scolds Adam for fighting too seriously. But Adam insists Arthur is a monster not to be underestimated. He asks Reynold how he trained such a strong kid. And even Jasmine, curious, asks Arthur how he moved so fast. Wanting to learn, Arthur can't reveal his lifelong training but notices Jasmine's determined gaze. She won't give up until she gets answers and will likely watch him closely from now on. The next day, the caravan continues toward the city. After days of smooth travel with no further dangers, Arthur trains during breaks. Reynold helps with physical conditioning, while others teach their skills, allowing Arthur to absorb their combat experience. He also shares some past life fighting knowledge with Jasmine. In the team, Jasmine grows closest to Arthur, not only caring for him but tutoring his studies. She even gives him her dinner portion. For his birthday, she gifts him a special dagger with an attached cord, thanking him for teaching her so much. Her warmth toward Arthur surprises the team, as she rarely acts this way. As they prepare to move, Adam urges everyone back to the wagons. Suddenly, Alice feels nauseous, worrying Arthur, but she reassures him it's nothing. The caravan then travels through a mountainous area. While Arthur reads intently, the wagon halts abruptly, alarming Alice about what's happening outside. Helen reports bandits attacking, and the team readies for battle. Angela's wind magic deflects the bandits' arrows. But Arthur realizes the situation is dire. They're surrounded. The bandit leader orders his men to spare women and children, as they fetch high prices. Arthur knows evil exists in every world, and the bandits cheer as they slide down the cliffs to attack. Alice comforts Arthur, saying she's by his side and that Reynold and his team are formidable warriors. They coordinate flawlessly, cutting down any bandit nearing the wagon. Arthur notes their individual skills outshine the bandits, but the enemy's sheer numbers make the fight grueling. Indeed, quantity can overwhelm quality. The bandit leader knocks Reynold into the wagon, alarming Alice, who exits to heal him. Reynold dismisses his wound as minor and warns that revealing her healing powers could be dangerous. He urges Arthur to get Alice to safety quickly. Arthur refuses, insisting he can fight, but Reynold reveals Alice is pregnant, and Arthur must protect her and his unborn sibling. Arthur recalls Alice's recent nausea and loss of appetite. Realizing she's pregnant, Reynold trusts Arthur's strength, so Arthur reluctantly leads Alice away. The bandit leader shouts to stop anyone from escaping, but Reynold charges him, vowing to fight with full force. On their escape, two bandits block Arthur, but Jasmine and Adam swiftly kill them, clearing the path. Reflecting, Arthur realizes he once took everything from others, and now he's fleeing from those trying to take from him. Perhaps this is karma for his past life. Still, he resolves to protect his mother and sibling to the end. Suddenly, the bandit's mage attacks Arthur with magic. Arthur shoves Alice aside, taking the full blast and tumbling down the mountain. He uses the corded dagger from Jasmine to drag the mage with him. Angela and Durden try to save him with magic, but it's too late. As he falls, Arthur feels a strange sensation, his heart filled with the love of his parents and companions. He finally understands the plea of the man he condemned in his past life and why his mother cried seeing him fall. Arthur has no regrets using his life to protect his family, but the thought of never seeing them again breaks his heart, especially since he was about to become a big brother. He wishes to be a brother just once before dying. But Arthur doesn't die. He lands in a dark forest, unaware of where he is or how long he's been unconscious. Before him stands a massive, shadowy monster, greeting him, leaving Arthur speechless with fear. Right after that, the demon brought Arthur to a cave, but its terrifying appearance left him too scared to speak. He had no idea what this creature before him was. Countless questions swirled in Arthur's mind, but the most urgent task was to return and save his parents as soon as possible. Before he could even attack, the demon flicked him with a finger, sending him face first to the ground. Speaking in a feminine voice, the demon claimed to be his ally. Confused, Arthur couldn't stop wondering who she was. But the demon didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to a corner of the cave, plucking glowing fruits and telling Arthur that if he wanted to recover quickly, he needed to eat them. Ignoring her, Arthur demanded to know where he was. But a sharp pain from his injured leg made him cry out like a child. The demon advised him to be grateful he was still alive and warned that if he didn't eat properly, she wouldn't answer his questions. Hearing this, Arthur grabbed the devilish fruit and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing frantically. Arthur's first question was about his parents' safety. The demon explained that she couldn't leave the cave, but her powers allowed her to see far or reach out slightly. With a spell, she projected an image showing Arthur that his family was safe. Several days had passed since the bandits were defeated. Overjoyed, Arthur cried, feeling fulfilled knowing his parents were unharmed. The demon introduced herself as Sylvia and Arthur thanked her profusely for saving his life. However, Sylvia's true identity remained a mystery he had yet to uncover. Days passed since Sylvia rescued Arthur. His wounds had fully healed, and he was eager to return home. But his wish couldn't be granted immediately. According to Sylvia, they were in the outskirts of Elshire Forest, a territory teeming with wild beasts and lawless bandits. However, Sylvia had a plan to help Arthur escape. She understood his urgency to return but needed time to prepare a space-tearing spell. Arthur, grasping this, used the time to train. Seeing him move and leap, Sylvia felt reassured, but what puzzled Arthur was her refusal to share anything about herself. Recalling days earlier, she had appeared as a monstrous creature, a form that repeatedly terrified little Arthur, making him scream. Sylvia's own injuries made him wonder what she had fought before. But despite her fearsome appearance, she was genuinely kind and warm. Thanks to her, Arthur was still alive. After training with a stick, Arthur switched to refining his mana control. Sylvia was astonished that a 4-year-old like him had a mana core. But she wondered if he could match her skill. She gathered a massive amount of mana in her palm, impressing Arthur. This technique, using magic while concentrating mana, was like a plane operating while refueling. A novel concept Arthur had never seen. Sylvia explained that humans oversimplify mana, believing it must be gathered separately from its use. But mana beasts, like her, could do both effortlessly, as natural as breathing. She asked Arthur if he wanted to learn the skill, eager to grow stronger quickly. Arthur enthusiastically agreed, but Sylvia first wanted to know what he'd do with such power, warning that mastering it would make him far stronger than he was now. Excited at the prospect of gaining immense strength, Arthur recalled recent events and felt deep hatred for evildoers. He declared that with this power, he'd bring death to those who stole what he cherished. Sylvia flicked his forehead, sending him flying several meters, and sternly refused to teach a child with such an expression. Arthur, frustrated, argued that defeating enemies was only natural. He had become a supreme king this way. But Sylvia asked if he felt joy obsessing over crushing others and checked if her flick hurt him. Relieved he was unharmed, she noted she could tear him apart easily but chose to treat him gently. Arthur, intimidated, begged her to be kinder. Sylvia calmly explained that anger and hatred ignite easily in humans, making violence feel exhilarating, but achieving such goals only breeds more hatred. She didn't want Arthur, whom she saved, to use power for vengeance. Arthur wondered if Sylvia knew about his brutal past life, where he mercilessly eliminated enemies to achieve his goals. As a reincarnator, he believed no one knew his true identity. Sylvia asked again what he'd use the power for. This time, Arthur recalled the joyful moments with his parents and the cherished memories with his teammates. Those were when he felt happiest. He answered that he'd use his strength to protect his loved ones. Sylvia gave his response a perfect score and agreed to teach him the technique. Meanwhile, another demon was hunting Sylvia and seemed to have sniffed out her location. Arthur recalled his old world, where he had nothing but wealth and fame. The mere sight of the king made servants cower, while others were mere flatterers. He knew the council held the kingdom's true power, and with resources depleted and birth rates low, the king's role was a tool of violence to wage wars for territory. Though Arthur brought glory to his nation, that day he abdicated, leaving in solitude. Now, in his new life, Arthur strove daily to grow stronger. Under Sylvia's guidance, he began mastering mana. She taught that combining mana gathering and usage would vastly enhance his magic. Arthur trained methodically, not rushing. In his past life, he lacked innate talent, so he defeated countless foes, growing through battles to master ki. Now, He officially conquered mana in this world, able to gather and use it simultaneously like Sylvia, who was pleased with his progress. But at that moment, Sylvia shoved Arthur aside, shielding him with boulders and warning him to stay silent. Confused, Arthur didn't know what she was doing. The demon hunting Sylvia had found the cave. Arthur noticed it resembled Sylvia but didn't know who it was. The villain, tracking her blood, demanded Sylvia come with him. But she refused. Enraged, he fired a dark orb at her, worsening her injuries. Arthur worried, but Sylvia reassured him she was fine. Then, she shed her armor, revealing her true form, not a monster, but a dragon with white wings and fur. Gathering immense mana, she unleashed it at the enemy. He warned that using such power would ruin her body. But Sylvia said she didn't care, she'd lived a happy life and only regretted not staying with Arthur longer. Her attack infuriated the enemy, who launched multiple dark orbs at Sylvia and the cave. Despite her wounds, Sylvia only worried for Arthur. As the enemy charged a massive dark orb, Sylvia, in desperation, cast a time-freezing spell, halting everything, including her foe and his attack. She pulled Arthur from hiding, revealing this was her true power. Arthur realized she was a dragon, and the name Sylvia suited her current form better. He had many questions, but Sylvia had no time to explain. She created a spatial portal to send Arthur away, admitting her waning strength would send him far. But she trusted his survival skills. Before he left, she asked one last time how he'd use his power. Arthur vowed to protect his loved ones, lamenting his inability to help the gravely injured Sylvia. Sylvia entrusted Arthur with her possessions, an egg-like object and a feather, instructing him to wrap the egg in the feather and guard it carefully. And a portion of her power manifested as tattoos on his arms. She said it was time to part, confessing she could have sent him back earlier but didn't, as their time together was truly joyful. Heartbroken, Arthur felt he failed to protect her despite his vow. But Sylvia said this was her inevitable fate, not his promise to bear. Her words made the once mighty king weep. Arthur wondered if these days had changed him or if his parents had nurtured his emotions. He didn't care if Sylvia was a monster or dragon, she was precious family. Sylvia teased that he already had a mother, but Arthur called her grandma, moving her deeply. She thanked him, urging him to hurry. So Arthur took the egg and feather and stepped through the portal. Though he reached for Sylvia, the portal closed, whisking him away. Sylvia then released the time freeze, taking the enemy's full attack. The villain knew she wouldn't die easily. And indeed, Sylvia clung to life. As he approached, she blasted mana into his face, triggering an explosion that destroyed the cave. After her death, Sylvia entrusted matters to her ally and contacted Arthur for final words. Arthur assured her he remembered her teachings and not to worry. Though his grief lingered, Sylvia acknowledged the world's sorrows, urging Arthur to turn them into smiles, her sole wish. Though young, she believed he could achieve this step by step. As the supreme king of his old world, she hoped his heart wouldn't be consumed by anger and hatred and prayed light would guide his new life. Shocked that Sylvia knew his true identity, Arthur wondered if she brought him to this world. After their talk, Arthur gained clarity and steeled himself to face the dangers ahead. At that moment, Arthur heard a loud scream ahead. Realizing someone was in danger, he enhanced his legs with mana and leapt high to survey the area. Before acting, he worried about Sylvia's egg, which he had to protect. After jumping through the treetops, Arthur confirmed a serious situation. 4 villains were kidnapping an elf girl to sell her. In this world, elves were highly valuable, so the bandits were thrilled at the prospect of a huge profit. Hearing this, Arthur instantly understood they planned to sell the girl into slavery, their actions mirroring the bandits who ambushed his parents. That incident had separated him from his family, and now these kidnappers were targeting a girl trying to leave the forest. Arthur trembled with rage but didn't know what to do. Sylvia had warned him not to let negative emotions control him, so he resolved to act carefully. After a day of travel, the bandits hadn't left the forest, deciding to camp for the night and continue in the morning. Initially, Arthur planned to follow them to reach a human city, but that would jeopardize the girl's safety. He had to act quickly. While waiting for the right moment, Arthur regulated his mana flow. Hours later, night fell. Arthur wondered why the bandits' wolves obeyed them so well, then noticed each wore a magical collar, enslaving them. Though he pitied the wolves, Arthur decided to use them to eliminate the bandits. He threw seeds at the wolves, making them howl in fear. The bandits, worried the noise would attract forest predators, ordered the wolves to shut up, and one brutally beat them. Seizing the chance, Arthur infused mana into his hands, circled behind the man, and silently took him out with a single move, taking his dagger as a weapon. When another bandit came to check and saw his comrade face down, Arthur swiftly claimed his life with the dagger before he could react. However, Arthur's small body tired quickly. A third bandit appeared. Noticing his ally's absence, Arthur struck decisively but didn't land a fatal blow. The man screamed, alerting the leader that Arthur was a mage. Spotting Arthur, the leader called him a gift from the heavens, certain a child mage like Arthur would fetch more than the elf girl. Bursting with mana, he charged to capture Arthur alive. Arthur dodged the first attack, frustrating the leader, but when Arthur counterattacked, the man sidestepped. Even Arthur's secret move, throwing the corded dagger, was caught. Disarmed, Arthur was kicked, flying several meters, grabbing Arthur's legs. The leader gloated that selling him would earn a fortune, but Arthur condensed flames, setting the man's pants ablaze. Enraged, the leader abandoned capturing Arthur alive, vowing to kill him and sell his corpse to collectors. Before he could act, Arthur threw the dagger, looping it behind the leader and piercing his head, killing him instantly in a surprise attack. The last bandit cowardly begged for mercy, but Arthur, unforgiving of vile kidnappers, showed none. After dealing with the four, Arthur entered the wagon, removed the elf girl's blindfold, and upon seeing her, glimpsed a strange figure. Though unsure who it was, his priority was getting her to safety. Noticing Arthur's minor injuries, the girl asked if he was okay. Arthur realized this was his first time meeting a child his age in this world. Having only interacted with his parents and adults, he covered the bandits' bodies. And when the girl asked what happened, Arthur lied, claiming they'd suffered an accident and died simultaneously. Unwilling to let a child see corpses, he gathered her belongings from the wagon and bid farewell. Alarmed, she grabbed his hand, silently scolding him for abandoning someone as cute as her in the forest. Arthur asked if the forest wasn't safe for elves, but she explained that lost children could be eaten by mana trees. Reluctantly, Arthur agreed to escort her home. She pointed deeper into the forest, admitting she got lost chasing insects and didn't know how far home was. Arthur sensed she was lying, but since she was a kid, let it slide. He couldn't leave her alone, so he agreed to go with her, making her overjoyed. Their only transport was the bandits' wolves, but Arthur, unsure how to control them, considered killing them for safety. The elf girl insisted on freeing them, saying the wolves were just tools misused by bad people and were friendly forest residents. Before Arthur could stop her, she removed their magical collars, and the wolves trotted off. Seeing them leave peacefully, Arthur felt relieved, and now it was time to get the girl home. The next morning, they headed toward the forest's heart. Along the way, they introduced themselves. The girl, Tessia, was an elf living in the forest. During a break, Arthur cooked a makeshift meat soup to keep Tessia fed. Knowing the journey was long, this reminded him of Sylvia, who insisted he eat to recover. Realizing he'd picked up her habits, but Tessia found the food hard to swallow. Arthur had boiled dried meat with salt water, lacking herbs or spices, making it inedible. He'd always thought food just needed nutrients, but recalled how his parents and companions gave him the best meals. Tessia craved sweets, which Arthur couldn't provide, but her childishness taught him how to care for his future sibling. When Tessia asked why Arthur was in Elshire Forest, he simply said he was separated from his family. He asked how elves lived, and she described their joyful, harmonious community, though her busy parents left her with her grandfather and a maid. The destination felt farther than Arthur expected, and they lacked information about Eleanor. Spotting glowing beetles, Tessia marveled, explaining they were common in Eleanor. Used as markers, she caught one and put it on Arthur like an earring. She added that after awakening her mana, she'd train under a master, leading Arthur to assume elves had a school system like humans. Noticing a wolf from the previous day trailing them, Arthur set up a tent for Tessia that night and stood guard to protect Sylvia's egg. Still unsure what it was, Tessia boldly invited Arthur to sleep in the tent, saying her grandfather forbade sleeping with boys, but promised not to tell if Arthur joined her. Arthur, claiming he wasn't sleepy, wished her good night. Unfazed, she warned that forest beasts might eat him outside. Realizing Tessia was scared to sleep alone, Arthur entered the tent to ensure she slept soundly. Still uneasy, she insisted he not leave her. even for bathroom breaks. Without her, before sleeping, she asked if human men were perverts who married multiple wives. Startled, Arthur clarified that perverts existed in every race, and only human nobles had multiple wives. Before finishing, Tessia fell asleep, making Arthur think his future sister might be just like her. After a restful night, they resumed their journey toward the elf kingdom under a bright sun. After days together, Tessia grew comfortable with Arthur, forgetting her near enslavement and staying cheerful. They crossed streams and forests to reach her home. Arthur occasionally felt annoyed, eager to finish this and find his family. Then, unexpectedly, a sharp pain surged from his mana core, overwhelming him. Tessia, alone, went to find herbs to make medicine, worrying Arthur further, as the forest was dangerous. Fortunately, the pain's frequency lessened slightly. At that moment, the wolf from before appeared, alarming Arthur. Tessia returned with medicine, and Arthur warned her to stay away from the wolf. Instead, the wolf dropped a wild boar as prey and left. Tessia insisted it was kindly repaying Arthur, not intending harm. That night, they enjoyed delicious roasted boar. Arthur admitted kids needed meat to grow fast. Tessia said she couldn't find herbs but found nutritious mushrooms elf women ate. Unfortunately, after eating them, Arthur suffered diarrhea without relieving his pain, and Tessia concluded the mushrooms were too strong for boys. That night, they shared the tent again. Exhausted from days of travel, Arthur's eyelids drooped. Tessia shared that before bed, she heard stories about human and dwarven kingdoms, hoping to visit them someday. She noted elves distrusted humans for their wickedness, but Arthur fell asleep before hearing more. Tessia, acting like a big sister, tucked him in to keep warm. The next morning, they continued, but Arthur's pain persisted. Tessia didn't know when they'd arrive, frustrating Arthur, who thought kids were useless. She suggested calling him by name. Feeling they were close, Arthur teased that he, a country bumpkin, was honored to meet an elf lady, annoying Tessia, who saw him as a friend. Arthur found friend an odd term in his past life. He only conquered, never befriended. Suddenly, Tessia pointed ahead, skeptical, thinking she was joking. Arthur looked and saw an ancient tree with a portal in its trunk. Tessia joyfully said this was her destination, inviting Arthur through. Stepping through, Arthur arrived in the elf kingdom, its architecture vastly different from human cities. Before he could process, a group of guards appeared, saying Tessia's portal use alerted them. They rushed to restrain Arthur, treating him as an enemy. Shockingly, Tessia's expression matched theirs, leaving Arthur stunned, believing he'd been betrayed. Perhaps Tessia's innocence had lulled Arthur into letting his guard down, and now he found himself captured in the elf kingdom. Even Tessia showed no reaction, leaving Arthur bitterly reflecting on the past. She had taken the initiative to befriend him, becoming his close companion, and he had trusted her completely based on her words alone. In his past life, Arthur was a ruthless king who trusted no one, and he cursed himself for not being more cautious instead of so careless. Now, the elf guards even demanded his execution for being human. Hearing this, Tessia panicked, shouting at her subordinates to stop, explaining that Arthur posed no threat. She insisted he had saved her life and begged them to spare him. But the guards accused Arthur of deceiving Tessia about rescuing her. At that moment, a commanding voice rang out, ordering the guards to stand down. An elderly man appeared, commanding them to release Arthur immediately. Seeing her grandfather, Tessia was overjoyed that Arthur was saved. The old man introduced himself as Virion, the former king of Eleanor, and thanked Arthur for rescuing his granddaughter, Princess Tessia of the Elves. Arthur was shocked to learn Tessia's lofty status, as she had never mentioned it during their time together. To him, she seemed like an ordinary child, lacking any regal aura. Tessia's parents arrived, elated that their daughter had survived. Arthur recognized them as the king and queen of the elves. But the king, harboring deep hatred for humans, ordered the guards to kill Arthur on the spot. Fortunately, Elder Virion intervened, noting that he had just stopped the guards. As Arthur, though human, had saved Tessia and brought her home, Tessia confirmed Arthur's heroism, pleading that no one harm him and even inviting him to the palace to play and eat sweets together. Initially hesitant, the king relented to please his daughter. Virion, however, insisted Arthur recount everything at the palace. Standing before Elder Virion, Arthur sensed a strange, powerful aura, but before he could ponder it, Tessia grabbed his hand, leading him to the palace. Along the way, Arthur was awestruck, as this was his first time in another kingdom. The architecture was uniquely unfamiliar, and the elf citizens were visibly wary of a human in their land. Arthur wasn't surprised, recalling from books that humans and elves had a history of conflict, remaining on the brink of war even now. He never imagined he'd see their city firsthand, let alone walk beside Tessia, the elf princess. Yet, recalling Tessia's earlier expression, Arthur felt confused, unsure what she was thinking then. The persistent pain in his monocore also remained unexplained, so he vowed to stay vigilant from now on. After a long walk, Arthur and Tessia reached the royal palace, a magnificent structure built beside a colossal ancient tree. Upon arrival, maids greeted the princess, and Tessia introduced Arthur as her savior, urging them to treat him courteously despite his human origins. She invited Arthur to explore or dine, but first, he wanted to explain everything to her parents to ease their doubts. Arthur was escorted to the family's reception room, where the king demanded he recount everything without hiding details. With the princess present, Arthur felt uneasy, as he had slept beside Tessia in the forest for several nights. Tessia encouraged him to speak freely, urging him to sit and relax, then suggested bringing tea and pastries to enjoy during his story. Arthur wondered if sitting as their equal was appropriate, as Tessia's family treated him like an honored guest, except for her father, who remained suspicious. The king introduced himself as Alduin, the reigning elf king, and his wife, Muriel, the reigning queen. Arthur knelt respectfully, introducing his name and birthplace, expressing his honor at meeting the elf king. Alduin acknowledged that, though born in a rural area, Arthur seemed well educated. Arthur deliberately spoke formally to be seen as mature, ensuring a smooth conversation with the king. He briefly explained being separated from his family due to a bandit attack, telling the truth but withholding full details. When he described Tessia's kidnapping by slave traders, Alduin grew furious, blaming the vile actions of humans. Arthur countered that slavery was a profession, not a universal human trait. Elder Virion, curious, asked how Arthur saved his granddaughter. Arthur admitted he was a mage who used magic to defeat the bandits and protect Tessia. The guards scoffed, accusing Arthur of shameless boasting, doubting a child could do such a thing. Virion silenced them, urging Arthur to continue. Tessia vouched for Arthur's truthfulness, confirming she was captured by evil humans who planned to sell her for profit due to the elf's value. Her mother gently hugged Tessia, relieved she was safe, and Alduin accepted Arthur's account. Arthur then made a crucial request, having been stranded here after the bandit attack. He only wished to return to his family. Alduin loudly accused Arthur of demanding a reward by asking for transport home, arguing that the deep enmity between elves and humans disqualified Arthur from such a favor. Arthur retorted that Alduin scorned humans as evil yet acted like the very evildoers he despised. Stunned into silence, Alduin couldn't counter, though he refused to let go of the human-elf grudge. Tessia, glaring at her father, expressed her displeasure, forcing him to relent. He admitted the portal to the human kingdom opened only every 7 years for a tri-racial leaders meeting, with the next opening in 5 years. However, he couldn't allow a human to stay in his kingdom long, so he'd soon arrange soldiers to escort Arthur home. Overjoyed at the prospect of reuniting with his family, Arthur was suddenly struck by intense pain in his monocore, causing immense discomfort. Elder Virion seemed to understand the cause of his suffering. In a private room to bathe, Arthur found the pain worsening. Desperate, he could only pray for Sylvia's help, unable to do anything else. Thankfully, the pain later subsided slightly. Before bed, Arthur stepped outside to clear his mind, determined to uncover the pain's cause. Seeing Tessia's happy family, he wondered if his own parents were safe. He believed their strength ensured their escape, but questioned if they'd smile like Tessia's family upon his return. These thoughts left him melancholic. Tessia, noticing his loneliness, approached to comfort him before bed. Thinking he'd interrupted her pampered time, Arthur teased her, prompting an angry retort that he always mocked her. She apologized for her father and the guard's rudeness and addressed his unspoken worry, assuring him his parents would surely smile upon his return. Yet Arthur tormented himself, blaming his desire to travel for the bandit attack. He wondered if his failure to protect his family would earn their forgiveness. Tessia slapped his face to snap him out of it, insisting his parents would be heartbroken without him and admitting she was sad he'd soon leave. At that moment, firefly-like insects illuminated the surroundings, creating a magical scene. In that instant, Arthur thought of his parents, questioning what he'd been fighting for. Reflecting on recent events, he realized he'd been consumed by his own darkness, foolishly battling his past. Tessia explained the glowing flowers, called firefly orchids, were her favorite, planted around the palace. Arthur apologized for his earlier behavior, saying he liked the flowers too. Though Tessia didn't understand, she was glad he seemed better. Suddenly, a firefly darted toward Tessia, and Arthur, suspecting an assassination attempt, enhanced his legs with mana and charge. Upon reaching the source, he found Elder Virion, who chuckled that a firefly couldn't harm his granddaughter. Arthur realized he'd been tricked. Virion had tested his strength. Impressed by Arthur's swift defense and counterattack, Virion no longer doubted his ability to defeat the slave traders. Tessia assumed her grandfather was bullying Arthur, but Virion clarified he came because Arthur was the most intriguing person he'd met in ages. Conjuring a wooden sword, he tossed it to Arthur, using magic to move Tessia aside to observe. Understanding Virion wanted to test his full strength, Arthur went all out. He attacked first, but Virion dodged effortlessly. Arthur used mana to restrict Virion's movements. Yet the elder grew faster, defying explanation. When Virion missed an attack, Arthur countered at full speed. But Virion shattered Arthur's sword, sending fragments toward Tessia. Arthur threw the hilt to protect her, then used fire magic to close in, only for Virion to block him. Recalling the fierce beasts he'd faced in arenas, Arthur's survival instincts kicked in, their desperate claws flashing in his mind. His fighting spirit surged, believing he'd die if he didn't give his all. With fierce resolve, Arthur landed a direct hit on Virion's forehead. Even Virion was shocked to be outmaneuvered. Eager for a second round, Tessia pinched him hard, scolding him for not holding back. Virion protested that holding back would have let Arthur overpower him. Arthur felt honored by the praise, and Virion offered to take him as a disciple. Sensing Arthur's hesitation, Virion assured him he was serious. Arthur declined, as he hadn't informed his parents of his safety. Virion revealed he could notify Arthur's parents that he was alive. At that moment, Arthur's pain flared, rendering him unable to stand. Recognizing that Arthur had inherited a beast's will, Virion urged him to become his disciple quickly, warning that the pain would eventually claim his life if untreated.